Welcome to Wisdom from the Aerial View, the podcast for those who wish to crush their anxiety and find meaning and purpose in their lives. Hello, Dr. Klein. How are you today, Mark?
Hello, Enid. How are you? I'm fine.
I'm fine, too. I am fine. I was just, before we got on the podcast, we were reminiscing about our conversation with our old classmate, Jeffrey Wolin, and it was wonderful. And it makes me think how precious our friends really are. And that's, I wanted to say to you, thank you again for being my friend.
Oh, thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for being okay. Today, you had sent me a text saying, let's talk about technology and why we're stressed. And so I did some of my little research, and I found an article that I thought was fascinating. In fact, was called The Paradox of Technology: Why Are We More Stressed Than Ever? And it was written by a man whose name I will probably mispronounce, but his name is Elioho Adegbe. I don't know who he is or whatever, but he's a technology person. He's an expert. And let me start this by reading his first paragraph. He says, "We're living in an era where technology surrounds us, promising to make life easier, more efficient, and connected. Yet many of us are feeling more stressed, overworked, and disconnected than ever. It's a stark contrast to a few decades ago when a 30-year-old seemed to have less stress and appeared younger and more relaxed compared to how they are the counterparts today. What happened along the way, and why does technology, a tool designed to simplify our lives, simply feel like it's contributing to our stress?" So you wanted to talk about this. And I think you're right. I think technology makes us more stressed. So why did you want to talk about it? And why do you think technology is making our lives more stressed?
Well, you start every episode of this podcast saying that this is a podcast for those who wish to crush their anxiety and find meaning and purpose in their lives. Mm-hmm. So I think it's fair to say that unless you have a mental illness, you want to find meaning and purpose in your life. I think everybody to some degree does. And of course, nobody really wants to be anxious. So anything that detracts from that goal is worth thinking about. So I'm actually quite pro-technology in many ways. I think although if you read the newspaper nobody reads the newspaper anymore, but if you happen to see a newspaper or you see something on Facebook or X or TikTok or anywhere else, you're just inundated with all this information all the time. And most of it is either curated to wind you up on one side or the other, or sell you something or convince you of something. So it's not just information, like bland, quote, information with a capital I.
There's information overload.
Yes, but it's also targeted information. It's out to make you think something or do something. So that is one of the real problems. So even though I'm very pro-technology, because honestly, this is the best time to be alive in the history of mankind. Fewer people are super poor, fewer people are hungry, fewer people are homeless, or in the sense, don't have a roof over their heads, let's put it that way, really than any time in history. So yes, I know you spent your life and continue to spend your life dealing with hunger, especially in the elderly, and it still is a problem, but compared to what it was 200 years ago, it's not even close. So kudos to you for doing that, because you're trying to eliminate it. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, eliminating it wouldn't even have been a possibility. So the point is that we've come a long way, and technology has really improved our lives in many ways. But on the other hand, like most things, there's a downside. And to me, the downside is that it fools us. It distracts us from our main purpose, our main mission. And that's really what I wanted to talk about. And what does that do to people? It either makes them uncomfortable, unstable, aimless, confused, and eventually anxious and even depressed. Not most people, but a subset of people. And, the other thing is, think about the number of people that are on what we would call antipsychotic drugs or mood-enhancing drugs. The number of people in this country that are taking something to feel better is enormous, right? Why? And why are they taking that? Because they're a little knocked off their game. They're just not feeling purposeful and stable and secure in what's going on in their life. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. How is technology adding to this sense of what I would call instability.
A couple of things here. I think we have lost our ability to disconnect, number one. We just can't disconnect. And two, this is sort of off the topic, but you just mentioned that people are on antipsychotics. Are we overprescribing? So you go to the doctor, you say, I'm eager, I'm anxious, I'm crazy, and they just prescribe, well, we'll shut you up, we'll give you some pill. And then you go home and you look it up, take your little Google machine, you look up what that pill was for. I mean, I think we can't disconnect. Even when you go to the doctor, you come home, they prescribe whatever, I have to look it up, and that sends me down another rabbit hole. It gets to technology. Are we sort of mashing it all together? Are we overprescribing ourselves, and are we in fact able to disconnect?
Well, that's a very good way to look at this. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I really like it. I'll tell you an interesting story. So I don't do social media, and then maybe 6 months ago, I forget what happened. My wife might have said something that she saw on Instagram, and I know what it was. I had created an Instagram account years ago for one of my early books. Not my first book, because I don't think Instagram was around then, but one of my earlier books. I had a marketing person, and she said to me, "Oh, you have to get on Instagram," and at that time, Twitter and Facebook and all those things. And I said, "Well, I don't do anything." She said, "You have to. That's the way it works." Fine. So she helped me create these accounts. This is a long time ago. And as you know, the only time I ever look at Facebook is when there's something from our high school class that you call me up and say, "Hey, you should look at this." And that's the only time I'm ever on Facebook. And I was never on Instagram, except I started making these posts for this podcast, and I did that for a while. But basically, I didn't use Instagram. And then my wife might have said to me about something on Instagram, and I looked at it, and just to see how what people do on Instagram. This is about 6 months ago, maybe. So I did it, and I was started getting to see what my feed was. What were they feeding me, right? Well, for some reason, for a while, I was getting like fashion stuff, and you know me, I'm not exactly a fashionista. So that was interesting. Then I got some sports stuff. I got a whole mixture of stuff. And then one day I was looking at it, and I just kept looking at it, and I kept looking at it, and all of a sudden, half an hour had gone by, and I went, "What am I doing?" So I got off it, and then maybe a couple of weeks or so later, I looked again, and I'm scrolling, what people call doom scrolling, and 20 minutes goes by. And you know me, I'm not one to sit around doing things like that. And it became obvious to me that it captured my attention, but in a very passive way, right? I just was like a drone sitting in front of the screen. And finally, what did I do? I just deleted it from my phone, right? I said, this is silly. I don't even want to have the opportunity to spend my time doing that. So I have lots of other activities, as you know.
It's addictive, isn't it?
It's addictive in a way that I never felt, I have to look. I never got to that point where I can't wait to get my phone out and look. But if I was sitting around in between something, and I just happened to open my phone and I saw it, I would say I could see myself doing it. So I only did it like maybe 3 or 4 times, something like that, maybe a handful of times. And I was, oh my God, now I get this, right? So what does it do? So how does this, what is a negative aspect of this? Couple of things. One is it'll show you things that are quite unpleasant. Somehow in there, I got stuff that I thought that was violent or demonstrating man's inhumanity to man in some ways. That was number one. I went, holy mackerel, people are watching this. This is going to have an effect on people. Number two, it kept me from being with others. And to me, that's the big problem. So we've had a constellation of events that have focused this problem and made it worse. One was COVID. So COVID by itself could have just been a transient phenomenon that lasted a year, 18 months, whatever, and we would have gotten over it. But what happened in COVID? Everybody worked at home, or those who could. I mean, unfortunately, those people who couldn't work at home, those are generally the lower income earners because they were delivering food, or they were working in a supermarket, or you get the idea. These are people who didn't have the luxury of working at home, and they were at risk more than other people. It turns out the risk for those people was probably negligible because unless you're older, the risk of getting seriously ill or dying from COVID was quite low, right? So, but anyway, we didn't know that at the time. So the rest of us were sitting at home. I think I told you that my practice required me to stay at home for like 3 months because I was one of the older people in the group. And at that point, they thought, if you're over 60 and you get a whiff of COVID, you're going to die, right? Of course, that wasn't quite true. But so I was one of the 2 or 3 people that they said, stay home. And then what happened after that? Instead of everybody immediately going back to the office or back to their work, they continued to stay home. The federal government only went back to work like a year ago or something like that. It went on for years. And even then, it never was 5 days a week. It said, okay, you can work from home 3 days a week, stay home 2 days a week, right? And that has persisted. So people are using technology to avoid being with other people. That is the worst idea. One of the worst ideas of all time. We need to be with each other. You know it better than anybody. You deal with older people all the time, and you see the loneliness.
Right.
And when you've had these people at the senior center that you help out at, they all say the same thing. They look forward to it, to be together. We need to be together. So this is one of the negatives of technology. It's pulled us away from each other. It's really bad. Number 2, it's shown us the worst of each other. So you know the story, when people were coming to the United States for the World Cup, there was great trepidation from many countries thinking, oh, the United States is a violent place. Everybody has a gun. Everybody's shooting everybody. I don't know if I really want to go. It's a dangerous place. And of course, they all came and went, oh, we love America. It's great. You got Waffle House and, all kinds of cool stuff. And we love America. America's great. And that's why you didn't hear any negative stories from people who attended the World Cup. They all loved it, right? Almost everybody loved it. You didn't hear one negative story of somebody from like Norway saying the United States is a pit. No, everybody loved it, right? And because when we're not together, we are convinced by the little snippets that we see on X or in Facebook or TikTok or whatever, YouTube, that X group of people is terrible. This area is terrible. People are mean. People are horrible. Whatever. And you see you're exposed to the worst of people. Whereas when you're in groups and you're hanging out together, you generally see the good parts of people, and you go, hey, this is pretty good, right? So that's another negative of technology. So it's pulled us apart. It's kept us from being together, and it's shown us in many ways and echoed and what's the right term? Reinforced are these ideas of that people are bad and people are evil and people are dangerous and people are out to get you, which of course there's some of that in the world, but it's the minority. So this is what I wanted. This is why this is the negative part of technology.
Well, I think when you're talking about, and in this case, we're talking about the stress that technology forces on people. People are stressed. One of the things that has always amazed me is how younger people have a tendency to want to make sure that they look good to their friends. And so they're posting things on Facebook and whatever about how good they look at this or whatever. I will admit I am not on TikTok. I've never looked at TikTok. I have no idea what it is. I'm not on Instagram. I don't do it. It's not my thing. But you see people who are constantly, I just saw it today. I was working, doing some thing at an assisted living facility. And some young people came to visit. I guess it was a mother or an aunt or whatever. And they were taking pictures of themselves with the person. And it struck me as sad because, and I don't even like that word, there was this older person and there were these young people surrounding this older person, taking the selfie or whatever of them with the senior. And she was sitting there just sort of in a daze. What are these people doing? And then they're going to post it on Facebook and they're going to post it on Instagram. Okay. But they were not relating to the older woman sitting there. They were relating to each other. And it struck me that we're using technology for what purpose? So they can put it on Instagram to say, I was here with Granny today or whatever. And Granny sat there stressed to the max. She did not know what was happening. She did not know what was going on. So technology, they were using technology and they didn't realize they were stressing out Granny. It struck me. It just was sort of interesting how they were visiting Granny and yet they couldn't disconnect from that technology for 22 minutes. It was
well. Give me, it's funny you mentioned that because I go to a lot of national parks, and when you go to the national parks, what do you see? You see people everywhere holding their cameras, right? And I take a lot of pictures. Don't get me wrong. At the national park, here's what I try and do: I'll either first take pictures and then put the phone away and then just stare out at the beauty in front of me and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Or I'll do that first and then take some pictures to remember. But I always separate the two because otherwise you miss the moment. I am very pro technology. I love technology. I'm usually one of the first people to get cool new things. I like it. I enjoy it. But the danger is when it detracts from the mission. What's the mission? Mission is to make this evolution from selfish to selfless, from inward focus to outward focus. No selfies. Turn the camera around to other people. When it distracts from that, when it allows us to sit in our homes and work or earn our living in one way or another and not interact with other people, that's bad. When the focus becomes the technology itself, capturing image rather than enjoying the moment and appreciating where you are, not good. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword in many ways. I hate to use that term because it's not really descriptive, but the point is, it's not that we should get rid of technology. Technology, like I said, it has been a tremendous boom for mankind in so many ways, and it will continue to be. But when we lose the interaction among people, that's why we're here. Now, I firmly believe this, and people can disagree with me, and they're perfectly allowed to disagree with me. You disagree with me sometimes, which is fine. But I'm thoroughly convinced that's why we're here. That's what it's about for humans. Maybe other species as well. I watch whale pods and dolphins and groups that hang out together and, different primates. And I think there's probably some of it too. I don't know. I can't speak to other species as well as at all. And there are experts in each of these fields that can probably answer that question. Maybe we'll have them as a guest. But at least for humans, that's what it appears to be about. And that's why I again, don't want to take away the technology, want to separate that technology.
Sure, that's right.
And we talked about stress. I'm not sure. I think the stress, because you bring up a great point. So let's talk about what is causing the stress. So in your situation with the grandmother who maybe she's having some cognition issues. I don't know. Maybe it's confusing. But for the rest of us, so what are the causes of stress? One is you're always on. So your boss or a coworker or somebody can always get to you, right? And maybe you don't have that separation that I can turn it off. I'm done. I'm free. That's part of the stress. Also, the fear of missing out, that FOMO, right?
Yes.
For younger people have that phone in their hand. What's going on? What are my friends doing? Why aren't I there? How come they're Turks and Caicos and I'm not? That's another source of stress.
Yeah, right.
Also, looking at other people and what they have. Maybe I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not accomplished enough. That's another source of stress. So there are various sources of stress. Of course, the answer to all of this is the same as what we've talked about now for many episodes, which is that none of that's important. When you understand the aerial view, then you don't have to worry about those things. You are only responsible for your own behavior. You can never be diminished by the misdeeds of others, only by your own. Understanding what your purpose is. These things help combat all those areas of stress. But for many people, it's super difficult. And like you said, the presence of technology can exacerbate these multiple types of stress. And we see it every day. We see it in our society. You talk about how many people are medicated. Not only too many people over-medicated, but even maybe not worse, but equally or maybe more severely problematic is the number of people who see therapists. Now, if you go to see a therapist for a few months because you have problem X or Y, great. If you're seeing a therapist for 15 years, no. There's something wrong, right? And a lot of people see therapists all the time. And I'm not criticizing them. They're seeing therapists because they're not getting a solution from another source. They're feeling this instability. I like that word instability because, we've talked about this. When you become a person of substance, it's like your legs are encased in concrete. So when a stiff wind blows, you're not going over. For many people, you've heard me say this, they're like balanced. It's as if they're balanced on a single stone and a good wind will blow them right over. They're not secure enough in who they are. They're not stable enough and not confident enough in who they are and what their purpose is and why they're here. And so what do? They seek, rightly so, they seek help. And they seek help from therapists, many of whom I think are, I won't say not qualified, but I will say not helpful, right? They're not making the problem better. The real solution is you have to empower people. You have to teach them the things that we try and talk about a lot, how to become a person of substance, what it takes to become a person of substance. And then you develop that concrete foundation and you're not getting blown over so easily. So just to get back to, as an aside, to talk about your a question about are people over-medicated? They're over-medicated and they're over-therapized. I don't think therapized is a word, but it should be, right? You get the idea.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, there are people, I guess, who are going to therapists for years and years and years, and good for them. They need to talk to somebody. I believe that they just need to vent or whatever it is, for whatever purpose they go. I'm not sure I see anything wrong with it. I haven't done it, but I know that there are people who do, and God bless them. If they think that's going to help them, then I don't. What's wrong with that?
I don't look. You know me. I'm pro people. I want to do anything that can help anybody. I spent my whole career helping people. As I told you, I still get phone. I haven't seen patients. Well, that's not true, but I've been out of my practice for 3 years, but rarely does a day go by where I don't have a phone call from somebody about a medical issue, which I help them negotiate. In fact, yesterday, I had somebody who we both know had been asking me some questions. So I'm all for helping people. But my problem is if you're going to see a therapist for 50 years, it tells you they're not helping you, right? What you have, it's not that you need to vent or have somebody to talk to. It's you need to become a person of substance so you're not easily blown over by whatever event occurs. So we need to teach people how to get there, which is honestly what we've been trying to do in this podcast, what I try to do in my writings. But because I always say, if you love people, you tell them the truth and then you help them through the problem and you help them solve the problem permanently or as permanently as possible. You don't just sit there. I could not imagine being a therapist and having somebody coming to me every week for 10 years, which is not uncommon, right? It is extremely common. And I would feel guilty. I'd say, I'm obviously not helping this person. I mean, yeah, they come, they pay me X number of dollars for my 50-minute hour, but they're really not a whole lot better than they were 10 years ago. What am I doing? I'm a failure as a professional. That's how I would feel. If I can't help a patient and I can't, and we've all been in this situation in medicine, if I can't direct a patient in some manner to help them solve the problem, then I feel like I've let them down, right? I feel responsible to help them get better. Not that I'm going to treat them because I don't do that, but to direct them, to get a diagnosis and direct them to the right place. So yeah, I think if you're a therapist and you're treating me for 10 years, you need to think about what you're doing. And so what you need to do this is training. This is learning how to become a person of substance. Anybody can do it. Everybody can do it. So that's what we should be doing for starting when people are young. The earlier you learn it, the better. And, there's never too late. I know a lot of people who are, in the latter part of their life who still feel the same way. And I always feel like our job is in any kind of healthcare is to help them overcome that permanently so they don't need to talk to somebody about this ad infinitum.
But I do think that people are lonely and looking for something, maybe looking for direction. I think that if you have suicidal ideation and you have been talking to a therapist and you didn't die by suicide, then the therapist probably helped. So I don't know. I guess we can.
No, we're talking about. Okay, I agree with you. That's a small group of people. I'm talking people who go for anxiety.
I don't know how small that. God forbid. I don't know how small that group of people is. I know that suicide rates are up. So if anything can help them prevent suicide, I think more power too. I agree with you. Enid.
I agree with that. I don't mean to minimize, but if you look at the universe of therapy in this country, right, a very tiny fraction are people who are psychotic, who are hearing voices, who have suicidal thoughts. It's not, I wouldn't say tiny, but it's relatively small compared to the large volume of people who are expressing what you're talking about: loneliness, anxiety, insecurity, all these things, right? That's what I'm talking about. So the people that really need help, that's a different story.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a question of who decides who needs help. I don't know. I can't make that decision. And quite frankly, I don't think you can either. If you think you need help and you're talking to somebody, you can be talking to a friend. Isn't that therapy too? I don't know. I think that we have different ideas about this and we should. That's fine. I think that if someone admits that they need help, then they should go get help.
Okay. So let's stick there for a minute. If somebody who needs help, let's say I'm hearing voices, I'm paranoid. Okay. You need help, serious help. If you think my life is worthless, I'm thinking of ending it, you need help. Nobody, I would never disagree with that, ever, ever. And I've dealt with people like this in my career. But I'm talking about the people who are mostly just anxious, some level of anxiety or insecurity or discomfort in their lives. Yes, talking to people is great, but if a therapist is seeing you for 10 years, then to me, that's a failure. It's a failure. It's like keeping somebody on a drug that doesn't cure them when there's no other alternative available, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So, we got a little off the topic of technology.
And I'll tell you why. I can bring it back to
Okay.
technology, because
Okay.
now there are people who are using technology to help them. In other words, they're using technology as therapy. There are those who are doing that. There are people who are now dating chatbots or whatever that is. I think they're turning to technology for therapy.
Well, I'm not saying that will never work. Who knows? AI is pretty good. Maybe we'll have AI therapists who are better than human therapists. I don't know. But that's, to me, it's
I don't know.
The issue with technology and stress to me is that it removes our interaction with others too much. That when we talk about taking the phones from high school students, right? And all of a sudden they're having lunch together like we did in high school, and they're talking and they're goofing around and playing games, whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And we remember that very fondly, right?
Sure.
And when technology removes that human interaction, that's where the problem is.
Agree.
And
Totally agree.
at any age, it's especially important for younger people, but it's really at any age.
Sure. In fact, I'm looking at the clock. I see we're running out. Let me end with back to this man who wrote this piece, who's a software engineer, like you see. And then I let you kind of extrapolate what this meant and figure it out. He said, while technology has certainly transformed the way we live and work, it's essential to recognize and address the new forms of stress it brings. By setting boundaries and engaging in mindful usage, we can harness today's technology benefits while protecting our well-being. After all, the goal isn't to reject technology, but to use it in a way that supports a balanced, healthy, and fulfilled life.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a great tool, but it shouldn't substitute for human interaction.
Right.
Which is why, there's been all this talk about AI is going to eliminate all these jobs. Well, it will probably eliminate some jobs. It's likely to create even more. But humans, here's a real, we have a couple minutes left. I just want to tell you this story. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good story. So I needed to buy something. I'll tell you exactly. I needed to buy a new electric toothbrush because my electric toothbrush had the battery no longer would retain a charge. So I went online and I looked around and I ended up at Walmart Plus, right? So I go to Walmart and I order this toothbrush. Great, it's going to come the next day. I open it up. The next day it comes, and it's in a box that's been opened with a sticker on the back saying it had the return sticker that somebody brought back 3 days earlier, and they sent it to me as a new toothbrush. Well, clearly somebody made a mistake, right? Fine. So I'm going, great. Now what do I do? So I go online to return it, and it says, you have to take this to a Walmart store. Well, I don't live particularly close to a Walmart store. So I'm thinking, well, that can't be right. I'm sure I can just mail this back. They mailed it to me and somebody dropped it off, So I call Walmart, right? Well, you know how that went. Chatbot number 1 takes you to chatbot number 2, on and on and on. I mean, this whole thing was just like, I wasn't infuriated because I try not to get infuriated about those things, but I'm spending a lot of time and I'm starting to laugh. And I'm thinking, this is why, and this is the new AI chatbots. It's so great, right? No, people want to be able to talk to a person. So we'll cut to the end of the story. After an hour on the phone with these people promising me they're going to figure out a way, I hang up this woman who is the supervisor. I think she's in India. She's very nice, but she said to me, yeah, I figured this out, that you're going to get an email and they'll tell you, they're going to tell you how to send it back. So she hangs up, and about a second later, I get a text saying, you can't mail this back. It has a lithium battery in it. You have to take it to the store.
Oh,
So after an hour, okay, fine. So I give up. I have to take it to the store. So yesterday I happened to be out and about, and it's about a half an hour ride to the Walmart, but I think, okay, fine, I'll just get rid of it. So I go to the Walmart And I walk in and I go to the return section. There's one woman before me, and she finishes, and I walk up to talk to this woman. And with the woman, I'm going to guess she's probably 60, African-American woman, big smile on her face, looks at the thing. I hand it to her, and she goes, "Oh my God, honey, this is ridiculous. They should never have sent you this. I'm gonna do something about this." So first of all, let me just return it. In 2 seconds, she had it back on my credit card. She said, "But that's not good enough. They should never have done this to you. This is wrong. I'm going to write this up about." And we were laughing about it and having a great time about it. And she was delightful. And I walked out of the store thinking that was worth the trip. Because you know me, I love talking to people, right?
Uh-huh.
And she was great. She was sensational. She didn't just say, "Fine, here's your return." She reacted like any human being would at the absurdity of this situation. And we had a good laugh about it. We had this little, 3 minutes of bonding, and it was delightful, absolutely delightful. And I walked out of the store thinking that was worth it. I'm so glad I had to drive to Walmart. Now, think about what I just said. I'm so glad I had to drive to Walmart. It was an hour round trip. Right? But I had this experience with this woman. That's the point. So technology, I could have gotten a label and sent it back and, dropped it off at a UPS store, whatever. But no, I had to physically go. And at the end of the day, the interaction with this woman was so fun, so pleasant that that the attitude, instead of saying, "I can't believe they made me do this," it turned out to be a great experience. I know it sounds bizarre, but it was. Right. It was a great experience. That's the point. Don't let technology take away from what is really meaningful and valuable in life, right? Technology is tremendously valuable, but drive to the Walmart, talk to the person. You'll be much happier in the long run. And that's, I think, the message. How we undo the stress of technology is by making sure it doesn't interfere with the interpersonal relationships that generate the true joy in life.
Very good. Very good. I thank you for today's broadcast, sponsored by our sponsor, Walmart. And
oh, if only, right? If only.
And I thank you. Good conversation.
All right. Thank you, Enid. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.